A serpent the size of the world rose from the sea. The ocean split, mountains crumbled, and the god of thunder, the most feared warrior in all of Norse mythology, charged forward carrying the greatest hammer ever forged. He won. He killed the world serpent. And then he took 9 steps and dropped dead. That is the moment every Thor story ends on. The heroic last stand. The legendary weapon. The noble death. But here is what nobody asks. If Mjölnir was truly the ultimate weapon, why did Thor need 3 others just to survive? Because according to the original Norse myths recorded in the Prose Edda and the Poetic Edda, Mjölnir was only one piece. Without iron gloves called Járngreipr, Thor couldn't safely hold it. Without the belt Megingjörð, he couldn't fully unleash it. And when all 3 still weren't enough, a forgotten weapon entered the story that most people have never even heard of. This is the arsenal the myths tried to hide. And once you understand what each weapon actually was, you will never see Thor the same way again. To understand Thor's weapons, you have to go underground, into Svartalfheim, the dark realm of the dwarves, and watch a bet go catastrophically wrong. It started with Loki. The trickster god had cut off the golden hair of Thor's wife Sif while she slept. When Thor discovered it, he seized Loki by the throat and threatened to shatter every bone in his body. So Loki did what Loki always does. He made a deal. He traveled to Svartalfheim and commissioned the sons of Ivaldi, master craftsmen of the dwarven realm, to forge replacement hair for Sif, the spear Gungnir for Odin, and the ship Skidbladnir. Legendary work. But Loki still wasn't satisfied. He found 2 brothers, Brokkr and Eitri, and he bet them his own head that they couldn't match what the sons of Ivaldi had made. The brothers accepted. Inside their blazing forge, Eitri shaped the metal while Brokkr worked the bellows without stopping, because the moment the bellows paused, the magic would collapse. Loki watched. Then Loki transformed into a fly and began to sting. He bit Brokkr's hand. Brokkr didn't stop. He bit his neck. Brokkr didn't stop. He drove his stinger into Brokkr's eyelid until blood ran into the dwarf's eye. Brokkr flinched. 1 heartbeat. 1 release of the bellows. That single interruption changed the 9 realms forever. The weapon emerged from the fire with its handle too short. Imperfect by design, not the dwarf's failure, but Loki's sabotage. The gods examined the results. Odin received Gungnir. Freyr received Skidbladnir. Thor received Mjölnir. And despite the shortened handle, the gods declared it the greatest treasure ever forged. A hammer that never missed. A weapon that always returned to its master's hand. A force capable of leveling mountains and calling lightning from clear skies. Loki lost the bet. His lips were sewn shut as punishment. But here is what the myths record and every modern retelling ignores. The short handle wasn't cosmetic. It meant Thor could only wield Mjölnir at close range. The most destructive weapon in existence, and the gods swinging it had to be close enough to be killed doing it. Loki didn't just lose the bet. He made sure Thor's greatest weapon came with a built-in cost. Every time Mjölnir crashed into a mountain, the mountain broke. Every time it struck a giant, entire valleys shook. But when that force came racing back into Thor's hand at full speed, something had to absorb the impact. Otherwise, even the god of thunder would pay the price. This is why the dwarves forged Járngreipr, the iron gauntlets. The Prose Edda, written by the Icelandic scholar Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century and preserving Viking Age oral tradition that stretched back centuries further, lists the gauntlets alongside Mjölnir as essential. Not optional. Essential. Without Járngreipr, Thor couldn't safely catch his own hammer as it returned from battle. The weapon that terrified every enemy in Asgard required its wielder to wear armor just to hold it. That is not the story of an unstoppable god. That is the story of a weapon that was just as dangerous to the one holding it as to anyone standing across from it. No glowing runes. No crackling lightning. Nothing about it warned you what was about to happen. Its name was Megingjörð, the belt of strength. And the moment Thor fastened it around his waist, his already godlike strength doubled. Instantly. The Prose Edda is careful about how it describes Megingjörð. Thor didn't wear it constantly. He wore it for his greatest battles, as if even the gods of Asgard understood that a permanently doubled Thor was something the 9 realms couldn't sustain. Think about what that actually means. The strongest being in Asgard, the god who had already slain giants, sea serpents, and creatures that existed before Odin himself, doubled. If mountains had struggled to survive his blows before, they had no chance now. And that is precisely why the belt frightens more than the hammer. Mjölnir had a flaw engineered into it. Járngreipr existed because the hammer was a danger. But Megingjörð had no limiter, no built-in cost. It simply made Thor twice the force he already was, and left the rest of the 9 realms to deal with the consequences. Not all of Thor's weapons came from Asgard. On his journey to face the giant Geirröð, a fortress lord whose halls were built for ambush, Thor was tricked into traveling without Mjölnir. No hammer, no greatest weapon in mythology, just the iron gloves, the belt, and a simple walking staff handed to him by the giantess Geirröð. Her name was Geirröð. Her staff was Gríðarvölr, and she gave it to him in secret because she knew what was waiting. At the river outside Geirröð's fortress, the current surged with unnatural force, driven by Geirröð's daughter trying to drown him. Gríðarvölr drove into the riverbed and held. Without it, the story ends there. Inside the hall, Geirröð made his move, hurling a block of molten iron directly at Thor with enough force to kill almost anything alive. Járngreipr caught it. Megingjörð tightened. Thor hurled it back with double force. It tore through an iron pillar, through Geirröð himself, and buried itself in the stone beyond. The giant was dead, not because of Mjölnir, because of a staff from a giantess, gloves built for survival, and a belt that turned defense into annihilation. The Poetic Edda, preserved in the Codex Regius manuscript, written in Iceland around 1270 AD, contains this story almost as a footnote. But it tells you everything. When Odin's system, the weapons Asgard gave Thor, was taken away, he survived on weapons forged by the enemy. At Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, every weapon finds its final purpose. Jormungandr, the world's serpent so vast it encircles all of Midgard and bites its own tail, rises from the ocean. Thor and the serpent are fated enemies since the beginning of the Norse cosmological tradition. The Poetic Edda records it plainly. They are so perfectly matched that neither can destroy the other without being destroyed in return. Thor raises Mjölnir. Járngreipr holds. Megingjörð tightens. He kills Jormungandr. He takes 9 steps. And the greatest arsenal ever forged in the 9 realms cannot save him from the venom already spreading through his blood. The Norse understood something that modern mythology refuses to accept. Power in the Eddas always costs something. Odin sacrificed his eye for wisdom and still couldn't stop what was coming. Tyr lost his hand to bind Fenrir. Freyr gave away his own sword, the one that fought giants independently, for a marriage, and died at Ragnarok with nothing left to fight with. Thor had more weapons than any god in Asgard. Mjölnir was power. Járngreipr was control. Megingjörð was potential unleashed. Gríðarvölr was the reminder that the simplest weapon, from the most unexpected source, decides whether you survive. And every single one of them pointed him toward the same ending. The gods of Asgard didn't fear Thor's enemies. They feared Thor. And the arsenal was how they made sure that fear never had to become a war between gods.